I spend a lot of time alone, like to a point where some of my friends are like, they think it's concerning, but honestly, I'm the kind of person who like, I'm really, really good on my own, and people who actually constantly need to be around people actually kind of bug me because it's like, I think that at some point in your life, everybody needs to learn how to, it's not like not having friends, but I think some people need to learn how to like make it on their own and be okay without needing other people's energy. Self-isolation gets this like bad stigma because people, every human being is wired to be like a social creature. I think it's really, really important to like have community and pour into that and have your people and your things. But I think a lot of people are also really, really dependent on other people's energy in order to literally just like function and feel good about themselves. And so I kind of want to talk about today, like for me, like how self-isolation has actually been really, really helpful and the things that it's taught me and how I've really started to like enjoy solitude and like time on my own, because there was definitely like a point in my life where I literally like had to always be around people, and I think for me that kind of translated more into like romantic relationships. So I just want to talk about like how my mindset has kind of changed when it comes to this and how I've really like learned to be okay with being on my own, just because I've really, really noticed a huge difference in the way that I feel about myself and the way that I interact with the world now that I'm a bit more okay with spending time by myself. Let me start this off by saying I think everyone is just naturally like at their core different. Some people are like just the way that they are, the way that they grew up, their family life. If you grew up with, like with siblings, you know, your siblings like your age, then I think it's more natural maybe that like you're used to constantly being around people and you're really comfortable with people and you don't feel like being social like drains you energetically. Whereas like for me, my sisters are 9 years older than me. When I was like 10 years old, I moved across the country with my parents. My sisters were already in college by that time, so they stayed back in Virginia. And then within that same year, my parents got divorced. And so my dad moved out, and then you know, when your parents are getting divorced, they're kind of like figuring their lives out and doing their own thing. So even though my parents were both very present in my lives, they still are. I still love both my parents. They're amazing. You know, like emotionally and mentally, like it's harder to kind of like be, I don't know, like they're kind of figuring their own like life out. So for me, from a really young age, especially like around middle school, I was really like good with like spending time on my own, processing my own emotions. I don't really like to like cry in front of people. Like I don't feel like I need to like rely too much on people. I actually feel like I burden people, especially like when I'm going through something. I don't like it to be someone else's problem. I like to kind of figure things out on my own. And so now that like I'm an adult, naturally when I'm in phases of my life where I'm still trying to figure things out and make changes, I don't like to be constantly around people. Like that's just like not my default. I'm just saying this all to say that I think everybody's kind of wired a bit differently, especially depending on how they grew up. And for me, I found that like I've actually had to like let go of a lot of shame that comes with being not just an introvert, but being someone who actually like, you know, when it comes to like friendships, I don't want to be hanging out with my friends every single day, every single week even. I'm not someone who's going to be texting and calling all the time. I have one really, really close friend that I text and call pretty frequently, but like I'm just not, I'm not like a frequent, like I'm just not that kind of person. And I feel like now that I'm like 26, I've gotten really, really comfortable with that, and maybe a bit too comfortable, but I've really, really over the past few years had to learn, because I do know a lot of people and it's really great. I have a lot of great friends and acquaintances that I've made over the years, but I've really had to learn how to say no. And I've really had to learn how to not feel bad for not wanting to be around people all the time. Because for some people, again, people who are used to constantly hanging out with their friends and all that stuff, that's their default and they think that's the norm. And so when you're not like that, it can rub people the wrong way. Again, especially people who are maybe a bit more extroverted. And I've noticed that like, you know, it's sometimes I think I have the most issues in friendships with people who are very different from me when it comes to that. I have some really, really extroverted friends who I love and I think they're amazing and I admire them for the way that they are, but it's hard for them sometimes to fully understand why I am the way that I am and why I don't always want to hang out and always do things, and I feel guilty, right? Because they don't fully get it and they don't fully understand it. And so I think it's really like important first to kind of recognize that like everyone's different and it's okay to I think you first have to maybe accept like how you are, and accept that like maybe you're just in a period of your life right now where you just don't want to be around people as much. Maybe it's just a period. Maybe it's just a moment in time. It doesn't mean that you're always going to be like this. It doesn't need to be like a thing, right? And I think sometimes we make spending time by yourself and isolation, all these things, we make it into like a bigger deal than it actually is, when in reality, like honestly, like, you know, when my parents were my age, they already had kids. They were already starting families. Like people, you know, a few generations back were starting families much earlier. And for them, family life was the priority, and hanging out with friends was something that they would do maybe once a month or every now and then, right? Like we had community, but people were prioritizing family life first. Whereas now I think the tide is changing. People are not prioritizing kids and marriage as quickly, and instead they're prioritizing themselves. And I imagine there's going to be a point in my life where I'm definitely going to be prioritizing, because for me personally, I don't know if I want kids or to be married at all. So I'm sure there's going to be a point in my life again where I do prioritize friendships and going out more and hanging out with people more. But again, for me, there were periods in my life where I did that, especially like in college and in high school. I was always hanging out with people. I was always doing stuff. I was always, you know, I would come home and my mom would be like, why can't you just say no? Like, you know, I was a pretty social person for a good chunk of my life. I was in relationships. And again, I was also always hanging out with friends. And so I had that period where I was doing it, and it kind of burnt me out. Like I kind of got tired of it. And I think a lot of people can kind of relate to that, because like around high school and college, that's like a normal time to be doing that. And so I'm just saying this all to say that I think it's also really important to recognize that like there's seasons for things. Maybe you're in a season of self-isolation right now, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be forever. And it doesn't mean that that's who you are as a person at your core. And I know I just said that like, you know, some people are wired differently, but like you can always change up your energy anytime, like when you decide. Like everything is temporary. If you're someone who maybe is like not naturally as good about being on your own, and maybe you want to kind of work towards it, or maybe it's a bit uncomfortable for you or whatever it may be, I think it's really important to kind of push yourself, right? And become comfortable with doing things on your own. Maybe that means taking yourself to the movies or going on a dinner date by yourself. You know, for some people, like the biggest fear would be to go to a restaurant by themselves and to sit by themselves. Like that would be such a huge deal. But I think when you can kind of start pushing yourself and just doing small things on your own, you learn to really enjoy your own company, and you really learn to just not care. Because I think a lot of people also, why they struggle to spend time by themselves is because they're scared of how they're being perceived. But like really, who gives a fuck? Like nobody cares about you that much. I'm sorry, no one does. So like you have to learn how to spend time by yourself and not care what other people think about you, but also you have to learn how to enjoy your own company. I genuinely believe that you cannot be happy in life if you're constantly dependent on other people and constantly dependent on other people's company in order to make you feel good. Like there's no way that you're able to get to know yourself if you're always in a relationship, if you're always hanging out with friends 24/7, if you can't do things on your own. Like you have to learn how to be a bit independent. That's how you build strength. That's how you learn about yourself. That's how you understand yourself better. And I think that you can actually show up better in your friendships when you learn how to, in any relationship, really, with your family, with your friends, with your lover, whatever it may be, you show up better when you can learn how to pour into your own cup and do things on your own from time to time, right? Like I imagine even when you're married or in a relationship or whatever, like it's important to spend time by yourself. It's important to have your own things and do your own things, or else you become literally enmeshed with someone's energy and it becomes toxic and dependent. I just think it's really, really important at some phase of your life and consistently throughout your life to make time to do things by yourself. Even as drastic as I really think that every single person in the world should go on a solo trip if you can afford to. Go on some kind of trip by yourself at least just once. Just do it just one time, and I promise you, you will see the world so differently. You will have such a better relationship with yourself. I just think it's the best thing ever. You guys know I have so many vlogs about that. And I also have a video on, you know, solo travel if you guys want to watch that. But I can't even fully describe to you like the amount of healing benefits that have come from me spending time by myself and learning how to be okay with it, especially over these past few years. just because like there was a point in my life, especially when I got out of my last relationship, it was a really long-term relationship. And I found myself immediately when I got out of that relationship, I was like hanging out with friends a lot, going out a lot. And then I started dating. And so I was in these like situationships that were not, you know, they weren't healthy. They were pretty toxic and they weren't really serving me. And I found myself addicted to this validation from other people. I was addicted to validation from men. I was addicted to validation from friends and family, and not even like friends. I've always had a pretty good, I don't know, like friends, I think I would hang out with people who I wasn't actually fully connecting with just for the sake of hanging out with people and having company. And I would do things like, again, like going out. I would do that a lot with people just because that's what like what they wanted to do. But really, like, that's not really what I wanted to be doing. And when I really asked, like, you know, I like going out from time to time, don't get me wrong, but like I didn't want to be doing that as much as I was, but I was doing it anyways because that's what my friends were doing. So for me, you know, and it doesn't have to be so drastic, but like I booked that one way to Thailand. I went to Thailand for like 2 months, or I was traveling solo in Asia for like 3 months. To really kind of force me to just sit with myself and do things by myself. And it really, really was helpful for me because now I'm at a place where it's like, you know, I live in this big city and I can do things on my own and I really, really enjoy it because I literally did something so drastic to spend time by myself. If you're at like a phase in your life where you're just stressed out by other people, or you feel like your energy is being drained by other people, whether it be a relationship or friends, family, you have to at some point look at yourself and recognize that you are actively choosing to do that. Like at the end of the day, we get into relationships, and even like with family, it can be hard, I know, because it's like, it's your family, but like you have to learn how to have some kind of boundaries, and you have to learn how to honestly, I think, put yourself first, because you can't pour into any relationship if you're putting other people before you. And if you're relying on other people, again, to give you energy, to give you validation, to give you confidence, that's unhealthy. It's not a good place to be. And I know a lot of people who are like that. And again, I notice that those are the people who get the most upset when I don't want to hang out, or when I say no, right? And when I don't always want to be talking all the time or texting all the time. Like those are the people who struggle the most when you put up your boundaries, or when I choose to put up my boundaries. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying this all to say that solitude, you know, spending time by yourself, it can be really, really good. It can be really, really healthy. Again, there's a point where it becomes unhealthy, and you have to be careful not to get too much into it, because some people, they spend their whole lives like a hermit and they don't want to talk to anyone or do anything, and that's not the best place to be. But I think you have to figure out what phase of life you're in right now. What season are you in? If you're like me and you're in a season where you're kind of spending more time by yourself, just embrace it, enjoy it, have fun, you know, discover the things that you like to do, discover your hobbies, watch your favorite movies, your favorite shows, and really relish in the fact that, like, girl, like let's say for example, like you are struggling with being single after being like in a relationship for a long time. Like, enjoy the fact that you get to, oh, there's a baby crying downstairs, sorry, it's really loud. Enjoy the fact that you get to choose whatever movie you want to watch every single night, and you don't have to deal with someone else being in your space. And enjoy the fact that, like, you get to, I don't know, you have complete freedom when you are by yourself. So just enjoy that, because you know, that may not be forever. There may be a day where you're married and you are constantly with someone and they're always in your space, and you're gonna be like, damn, I miss when I was just on my own and doing my own thing, right? Or there's gonna be a day where you have kids, and you know, everything changes in life. So embrace the season if you're in it. Don't shame yourself too much if you're in a season of isolation. Enjoy it. It's okay to be alone every now and then. And yeah, I hope this was helpful in some way. I kind of just rambled, but let me know in the comments down below if any of this resonated. Let me know what season of life you're in currently. Are you finding balance? Are you in a good place where you're balancing being extroverted and introverted? You know, for me, I'm not balancing it that much. I'm actually like I know 2025, I'm gonna start being more social again for sure. But yeah, I love you guys so much. I hope you guys are doing well, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.